Then above it we have the various satanic orders, some of which, in fact I'm sad to say, most of which I was a member of, all the way up to the 9 unknown men, the 7, and then the great architect of the universe himself, Lucifer, the limitless light of nothingness. That's his title. And I think it's rather appropriate, actually. Anyway, and that is what that seal means. That is what that all-seeing eye refers to. That is a symbol, ultimately, of Lucifer. Now, let's talk about this conspiracy in a little more detail and depth. Oops. Basically, all of you, or at least I would think some of you, have heard of a document, an historical document called the Protocols of the Learned Elders of Zion. Now, that document was used by a lot of people, including Hitler, to blame the Jews for virtually everything that was wrong in the conspiracy, that they were causing all the troubles that were in the world. Unfortunately, they got the wrong elders and they got the wrong Zion. The actual thing that we're talking about here is the Priory of Zion. And notice how it's spelled up there. It's not spelled with a Z the way the Bible spells it, at least the way the King James Bible spells it. It's spelled with an S, the way the Catholic Bible spells it, and that's for a reason. The Priory of Zion is a fairly secret, until maybe the last 10 years or so, high-level Masonic Rosicrucian type body. And the Priory of Zion believes that it is the keeper of the Holy Grail. This group believes that it has the bloodline of Jesus Christ, that Jesus had children by Mary Magdalene, and that down through the centuries it has guarded that bloodline. And that many of the, like, for example, the Merovingian kings and some of the other kings down through the century, right up today, and of course you may know this, that Prince Charles and Queen Elizabeth claim to be descended all the way back to King David. They believe they have this royal bloodline. And this group is planning on trying to destroy biblical Christianity by the year 2000. And the way they're going to do it, see, they teach in their inner circles, and now this has all kind of been revealed by a series of books, beginning with the book Holy Blood, Holy Grail back around 1986, 1987, that Jesus did not die on the cross, that he was spirited away from the tomb, that he married Mary Magdalene, and they ran off and lived happily ever after and had children, and that he died a happy old age. And down through the years, these descendants of Mary Magdalene today are part of the reigning houses of Europe and the reigning houses of Freemasonry. And they believe they will very soon rule the world. But here's the interesting thing. The way they believe they're going to destroy Christianity forever is sometime in the next couple of years, this is the planning, and God can always interfere with these plans, is they're going to produce the bones of Jesus. Or at least what they claim are the bones of Jesus. I don't know how they're going to prove that. And they believe that will destroy Christianity, along with the revelation that Jesus was married and that he never rose from the dead. So this is part of the plan. And unfortunately, you know, they are moving ahead with their plan. I know God, though. I know he can certainly do something to prevent that. But ultimately, this is what's going to happen if they have their way. Now, if you want to understand the philosophy of this group and what they want to do, the highest levels of Masonry, don't look at the American Revolution, because while there were Masons involved in it, it was very biblically based. Look at the French Revolution. The French Revolution was, in fact, a textbook case of what the Illuminists and the Masons would like to do if they get their hands on our government. Now, if you know anything at all about the French Revolution, you know it was very awful. They had the Reign of Terror, where thousands and thousands of people were sent to Madame la Guillotine for a very close shave. And clergy, whether Protestant or Catholic, were killed without mercy. Churches were destroyed, monasteries were destroyed, churches were defaced. For example, Notre Dame Cathedral, which is noted throughout the world for the beauty of its architecture, which is Masonic, by the way, was defaced. A half-naked prostitute was enthroned on the altar, as the goddess of reason. And a crown was placed on her head and a burning torch was placed in her hand. This, my friends, is the origin of the Statue of Liberty. She is not the goddess of liberty, she is the goddess of reason, as opposed to religion. Because everybody knows that no reasonable person would believe in God. No reasonable person would believe in Jesus Christ rising from the dead. Now, would they? And so when you see Lady Liberty in New York Harbor, realizing that the light that she is raising is the light of Lucifer, not the light of liberty. And if you want further proof of this, let me point out two things. Number one, the Statue of Liberty was created by a Freemason in France, designed and built by a Freemason in France as a gift to the Freemasons of America. And not only that, if you look at the tablet that she holds in her hand, you know what's engraved on that tablet? Just 4 characters. 1776, the year the Illuminati was formed, not the year America was formed. Now, we need to get on here. The next character we're going to deal with, no, this is not Santa Claus on a bad hair day. This is probably the most honored Mason in American history. His name is General Albert Pike. And this guy is one of 2 Masons who has the honor of being buried in the House of the Temple in Washington, D.C. You will have a lot of Masons try and tell you, because if you read Albert Pike's material, you will find out that he's an antichrist, that he's a Luciferian, that he mocks Christianity, that he denies the virgin birth, that he denies the resurrection of Jesus Christ, that he calls the early Christian fathers dunces. This is all in Morals and Dogma, the book which is virtually the Bible of the Scottish Rite. But let me tell you, there is not a more honored Mason in American history. Albert Pike was a Confederate general who, by the way, was noted for his atrocities, both against Union troops and against Native Americans. He did things that were horrible to those people he captured. Basically, they called him a fiend. Then he went on to, with General Nathan Bedford Forrest, to found the Ku Klux Klan. And he had the title of the Chief Justice of the Invisible Empire. The Ku Klux Klan is a Masonic body. Now, it's not officially a Masonic body, but it was started by a Mason. And to this day, it maintains many of the same characteristics of Masonry. He was the sovereign Grand Commander of the Scottish Rite, which meant he was the highest-ranking Mason in America. He also was a supreme Luciferian pontiff, which meant he was the highest-ranking Satanist in the world. He's also the author of Morals and Dogma. It was said of Albert Pike that he was the greatest Masonic philosopher of the Western and English-speaking world, that he left Masonry, he found Masonry in a cabin, kind of in desolation after the anti-Masonic period of American history, and left it in a temple. He's the only Confederate general to be buried within the city limits of Washington, D.C., and he's the only Confederate general and KKK member to have a 50-foot statue in his honor within Washington, D.C.'s city limits. Now, why isn't the NAACP out picketing that, huh? Anyway, the guy was a racist. The guy was a war criminal. The guy was a Satan worshiper. And this is the most honored Mason in American history. Once Pike opened the door, a veritable stream of occultists began to get into Masonry. Arthur Edward Waite, 33rd degree. He's the author of the monumental tome, which probably weighs 10 pounds, called the New Encyclopedia of Masonry. He wrote many other books. He was a member of the Occult Society, the Order of the Golden Dawn. And one of the books he wrote was the Book of Black Magic and Pacts, in which he's happy to tell you how to sell your soul to the devil. Thank you very much. This next gentleman, Bishop C.W. Leadbeater, was the Archbishop of the Liberal Catholic Church, which is a branch of the Theosophical Society. Now, the Theosophical Society is the grandmother of all New Age movements. And he was also a pedophile who was nearly run out of England because he couldn't keep his hands out of his older boys' cassocks. Then we have Aleister Crowley, who probably doesn't need any introduction, but I'm going to say a couple of things about him anyway. Aleister Crowley bragged that he was the great beast, 666. When he was 18 years of old, he crucified a toad upside down after baptizing it as Jesus Christ. He basically was described by the world's press as the wickedest man alive. He bragged about doing 150 child sacrifices a year, and he was a bisexual and a devil worshiper. He had so many Masonic degrees that he said if he were to wear the jewelry of all the different Masonic degrees he was entitled to wear, an elephant would creak under their weight. And basically, I've seen a list of all the Masonic degrees he held, and it filled 5 pages. Then we have W. Wynne Westcott. He's the city coroner of London at that time. He was a high-level Mason and a high-level Rosicrucian and the co-founder of the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn. Then we have Manly P. Hall. Manly P. Hall is more contemporary. He just died about, I think, 1991 or 1992. He has been described as the most honored Mason of the 20th century. Manly P. Hall was an occultist. He wrote hundreds of occult books. He was a Rosicrucian. He wrote the monumental masterwork, The Secret Teachings of All Ages and Countries, which is invariably in every Scottish Rite library that I've ever been in. And this guy, again, teaches people how to sell their souls to the devil. One of the books that Manly P. Hall wrote, The Lost Keys of Freemasonry, tells us that once a Master Mason becomes the warrior on the block, the seething energies of Lucifer are his to command. When this fellow died, he was eulogized greatly, incredibly well by the Scottish Rite Journal. And yet the guy was a black magician. Now, and understand something. If you're here tonight and you happen to be a Mason, these are your brothers. These are your brothers. And this is just a partial list. In my book, Masonry Beyond the Light, I document how virtually every leading occultist of the last century was a Freemason. Every leading witch, every leading black magician, every leading white light magician, they were all Masons. What a wonderful, wonderful recommendation for the fraternity. So, now we're going to look at Masonry from the Christian point of view. Is Masonry in fact a religion? I get brochures sent to me quite frequently by irate Masons. I get a lot of email from irate Masons. Praise God. Pretty soon I'm going to get as much nasty email from the Masons as I do from the witches. But anyway, and they send me these brochures in which they say Masonry is not a religion. Over and over again, every Grand Lodge in the United States says Masonry is not a religion. They say it's a religious society, but it's not a religion. Now, what does that mean? That's like me saying, well, I'm Jewish, but I'm not a Jew. I mean, they're just playing word games. I say, let's forget the word games. Let's just look at what Webster's Dictionary said. When I first wrote my book, I went to my bookshelf, I had a copy of Webster's Dictionary. I pulled it off the shelf, I looked up the definition of religion. It basically said this, that religion, number one, is a belief in a deity or deities. Number two, it is an organized system of rituals and prayers offered to that deity. Number three, that it's an organized system of philosophy and ethics. Now, does Masonry meet any of those criteria? Well, let's look. In order to be a Mason, as I've already mentioned, you must believe in God in some form or other. Because right when they bring you to the lodge, they bring you in, you're made to kneel, and you're asked, in whom do you put your trust? And if you don't say in God, you're let out of the lodge. They'll give you several chances. And by the way, you're not allowed to say, I put my trust in Jesus Christ, because the Masons don't believe Jesus Christ is God. Okay.